One of the many baffling mysteries concerns who survives and who doesn't. It's not who you'd predict either. Sometimes someone who survives is an inexperienced female hiker, while the experienced hunter gives up and dies in one night, even though it's not that cold. The category that has one of the highest survival rates is children 6 and under, the very people we're most concerned about. Have you read this one? Have you read this? Deep survival. Who lives, who dies, and why? I agree with all of Gonzalez's interpretations. He takes some stuff from his interpretation of Taoism, which is different than my interpretation of the Tao Te Ching. And that's fine. But he's got some really solid, when he's not talking about the, spiritual things that I think he has some biases on, obviously, because I have my biases. When he's not talking about spirituality, he does a fantastic job, and I can actually show you an excerpt because this is interesting. He does a fantastic job looking into really horrific survival situations and what helped people survive, why they survived. One of his titles is chaptered, "We're all gonna fucking die." It's good. I like his writing style. You know, it's a good book if it makes you no, that makes me mad, I totally disagree. A well-reasoned, well-thought-out thing. And also you're like, oh man, that I never thought of that before, right? Something that doesn't just stroke your ego and agree with you, but makes you think. And it's solid. Deep Survival by Lawrence Gonzalez. Who lives, who dies, and why. This, I think, is fascinating. One of the many baffling mysteries concerns who survives and who doesn't. It's not who you'd predict either, Hill, who has studied the survival rates of different demographic groups, told me. Sometimes someone who survives is an inexperienced female hiker, while the experienced hunter gives up and dies in one night, even though it's not that cold. The category that has one of the highest survival rates is children 6 and under, the very people we're most concerned about. Despite the fact that small children lose body heat faster than adults, they often survive in the same conditions better than experienced hunters, better than physically fit hikers, better than former members of the military or skilled sailors. And yet one of the groups with the poorest survival rates is children ages 7 to 12. Clearly, these youngest children have a deep secret that trumps knowledge and experience. Scientists do not know exactly what that secret is, but the answer may lay in basic childhood traits. At that age, the brain has not yet developed certain abilities. For example, small children do not create the same sort of mental map adults do. They don't understand traveling to a particular place, so they don't run to get somewhere beyond their field of vision. He talks a lot about how people who get lost, one of the biggest mistakes you can make is to keep looking. And once you realize you're lost, you need to stop and sit where you are so that the rescue teams can find you, because otherwise you end up circling and making bigger and bigger circles. And you can have traveled super far and have no idea why. People just get really disoriented. So, but children younger than 6 don't do this. They don't run to get somewhere beyond their field of vision. They also follow their instincts. If it gets cold, they crawl into a hollow tree to get warm. If they're tired, they rest so they don't get fatigued. If they're thirsty, they drink. They try to make themselves comfortable, and staying comfortable helps keep them alive. And this is for survival in a wilderness situation. This is very different than an abduction situation. I don't know if it's true. I have to look into this, but I've heard in an abduction situation, small children usually don't live beyond a couple hours. But we're talking survival in the woods. If they're tired, they rest so they don't get fatigued. If they're thirsty, they drink. They try to make themselves comfortable, and staying comfortable helps keep them alive. Small children following their instincts can also be hard to find. In more than one case, the lost children actually hid from rescuers. One was afraid of coyotes when he heard the search dogs barking. Another was afraid of one-eyed monsters when he saw big men wearing headlamps. Fortunately, both were ultimately found. The secret may also lie in the fact that they do not yet have sophisticated mental mapping ability that adults have, and so they don't try to bend the map. They remap the world they're in. Children between the ages of 7 and 12, on the other hand, have the same adult characteristics, such as mental mapping, but they don't have adult judgment. They don't ordinarily have the strong ability to control emotional responses and to reason through their situation. They panic and run, and you can imagine that 7 to 12-year-old like running, screaming through the woods when crying, and they can't figure themselves out and they get eaten by a bear, right? They look for shortcuts. If a trail peters out, they keep going, ignoring thirst, hunger, and cold until they fall over. In learning to think more like adults, it seems they've suppressed the very instincts that might have helped them, but they haven't learned to stay cool. Many may not yet be self-reliant. One of my survival instructors told me that inner-city children did better in survival training than the ones from the suburbs because the suburban children have no predators. They have begun to learn to navigate, to make detailed mental maps. Children that age trade secret routes and shortcuts. But little knowledge is dangerous. A child that age will run across a road without stopping when lost. We like to think that education and experience make us more competent, more capable, but it seems that the opposite is sometimes true. Ultimately, after years of chasing the ghost of the boy aviator who went on to become my father, I went to survival school to try to find out if there was a way to learn the skills of survival while retaining the instincts of a small child. I thought that perhaps through all the risk-taking, the quest for cool, I had wandered off the path of life. I couldn't help thinking then of the Zen concepts of the beginner's mind, the mind that remains open, ready, despite years of training. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, said Zen master Shunryu Suzuki. In the expert's mind, there are few. Somewhere, they talk also about teenagers and teenagers' low survival rate, and it is fascinating. But where is the research study he actually cites? I don't know. To find out if he's full of shit or not, you need to read the book probably and find which research study he's citing. But basically, the research study that I was remembering and reading from is one of park rangers over various national parks. So it's very, very interesting. There's another section in here that I think is also fascinating, and it has to do with humor. Stress releases cortisol into the blood. It invades the hippocampus and interferes with its work. Long-term stress can kill hippocampal cells. That's why survivors of, really horrible assault, and usually sexual assault survivors, will have actual memory issues. Because the hippocampus is where, a lot of your memory is managed. So it'll be really unfair because it'll be difficult to testify on your own behalf, because you literally have memory blanks even though something horrible happened to you. The amygdala has powerful connections to the sensory cortices, the rhinal cortex, the anterior cingulate, and the ventral prefrontal cortex, which is important in depression, which means the entire memory system, both input and output, are affected. As a result, most people are incapable of performing any but the simplest tasks under stress. They can't remember the most basic things. In addition, stress, or any strong emotion, erodes the ability to perceive. Cortisol and other hormones released under stress interfere with the working of the prefrontal cortex. That is where perceptions are processed and decisions are made. You see less, hear less, miss more cues from the environment, and make mistakes. Under extreme stress, the visual field actually narrows. Police officers who've been shot report tunnel vision. Stress causes most people to focus narrowly on the thing they consider most important, and it may be the wrong thing. Stress causes people to focus, like I said, narrowly on the thing they consider most important. It may be the wrong thing. So while the fighter pilot was fixed on landing, he very well might not have seen the lights or even heard the LSO's voice telling him to go around. He tells a story in an earlier chapter about a stressed-out fighter pilot, smashing into parts almost on the landing deck because he's not listening to what the LSO is telling him to do. The organism was doing what it knew how to do best, escape danger and get to safety as fast as possible. The rest of the input became irrelevant noise efficiently screened out by the brain, so we hit the boat. I did something very like that when I was a new pilot. I was on approach to landing at my home airport when the controller told me I was on a collision course with another plane. But I was so focused, so fearful, that I literally didn't hear him. I heard nothing, and I didn't even see the plane. He called me on the radio 3 times, and fortunately my friend Jonas, who was sitting beside me, told me that the controller wanted an immediate right turn. The task of just getting the hell down had become so important, so emotionally motivated, that it occupied what neuroscientists call working memory, which in effect means consciousness or attention to the exclusion of other stimuli. Only because Jonas was so close to me and could command my attention by punching me in the arm was he able to break the lock I had put on working memory. Emotions are survival mechanisms, but they don't always work for the individual. They work across a large number of trials to keep the species alive. The individual may live or die, but over a few million years, more mammals lived than died by letting emotion take over, and so emotion was selected. For people who are raised in modern civilization, the wilderness is novel and full of unfamiliar hazards. To survive it, the body must learn and adapt. Although strong emotions can interfere with the ability to reason, emotion is also necessary for reasoning and learning. Emotion is the source of both success and failure at selecting correct action at the crucial moment. To survive, you must develop secondary emotions that function in a strategic balance with reason. One way to promote that balance is through humor. When he's talking about the importance of using emotion for survival, there's a principle in dialectical behavioral therapy called wise mind, where the idea is you don't want to be run by emotion mind, but you also don't want to be run by logic mind, because emotion mind may be telling you important details about staying alive. I think we did a whole session one time about wise mind versus emotion mind, but we can talk about it again sometime, because I don't know if I ever saved it into a video. But essentially, somebody who's run by only emotion mind, for example, might randomly quit their job because they think everyone at work hates me, because they just feel that way. They may be performing really well, and then they suddenly break down and quit for no reason, right? Or somebody who's run only by logic mind might be operating in a situation where they ignore important emotional cues for themselves that are telling them, for example, that they're being burnt out. They might be like, oh, I have enough food, I have enough, water, I'm doing my job, this job has to be done this way, boop, 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 boop. And failing to read the emotional cues. This is what happened to me right before the breakdown in Korea, where I was every night in constant terror throughout the entire night, because I was having nightmares and the presence that was next to my bed, and I was in severe pain all the time. But I was kind of I just have to get this done. I have, this logic that's guiding me through the process, and this is what has to happen. And really ignored the fact that there was something severely wrong that was getting worse. And I knew it, but I was like, we can just push through it. We have this. Rather than, and I was able to logic myself to really dangerous situations, which made things be I gave off a lot of mixed signals, not just to myself, but to other people, because I was able to function. I was talking with the pain psychologist today about how some of the strategies that my body developed in emergencies were really important for functioning, right? If you are trying to take care of and make a decision about one ill dying baby versus another ill dying baby, or what you need to do for this sexual assault patient when you've just gotten a call about something else, right? You need to be able to tell the emotions, not talking to you right now, we are doing this, and this, right? So you develop kind of a cognitive blank, right? But on the other hand, there was a different kind of cognitive survival mechanism where if my body or brain was receiving too much information that was unfavorable to me pushing forward on my mission, it would literally blank it out. It's really weird. It'll be like if someone is trying to tell me, talking to the pain psychologist today, trying to tell me something helpful or that might cause me to have to shift course or stop from taking part in my mission. It'll literally, I'll get a headache, my vision will blur, and I won't be able to hear. It's that severe how it'll get. She's trying to talk to me today about, self-compassion, which to me is bullshit. And I know it's not bullshit. I know she knows what she's talking about. She has, multiple degrees, and she's really well trained in neurobiology, but she's trying to talk to me about certain poles in my nervous system, and my brain is like, nope, that's dumb. Shouldn't have to do that. Should just be better. We should just be better already. It's time to be healthy. We should just be better. We shouldn't have to deal with this, right? And so, I can't even give her any logical response to argue back. And this is an example of, an emotion mind, right? I can't give her any logical response to argue back, except just that, but it's dumb. My body shouldn't do that. Just shouldn't do it. Just shouldn't do it. Let's just move past and be better already. Right? So that's a situation in which, that emotion exists to protect me and make me able to just, nope, we should just be able to push forward. We should just be able to do the thing, right? That's an emotion mind. I don't need your facts about, health or anything like that. We just need to go. Shh, be quiet, right? It'll literally my vision will blur, and I will have headache, and I won't be able to hear clearly. I'm very, very ill. Most people are not to this level of illness, right? But that mechanism developed to protect me in traumatic situations so that I could just push forward. And the opposite mechanism, the mechanism that I was using in Korea, which is different than what I was using in residency, is kind of an ignoring. Both are ways to ignore each other. So your logic mind, in dialectical behavioral therapy, we talk about how your logic mind and your emotion mind should both be incorporated into what they call wise mind. And that's kind of what he's talking about here. You have to be able to, in a survival situation, incorporate stimuli from the environment and from inside you so that you can better predict what's going on, right? Because really, there's no such thing as emotions or logic. It's all information from different parts of your brain. And so the question is your amygdala and your hormonal system, which is our emotions, right? Is that speaking up, or is your frontal cortex, your calculating, speaking up? And are you shutting one out at the exclusion of the other, right? What is the actual reality that you are screening out by shutting up one of these things, basically? So, yeah. It's difficult because the brain trying to think about itself, it's incredibly frustrating, actually. It's frustrating when you're like, I know what my body and brain should be doing, and they're definitely not doing that, and they definitely used to. I was telling her today, this is stupid, I shouldn't have so much difficulty with stuff. I have gone through much worse, right? And other people have gone through much worse. I've held dead people, and I've dealt with some of the nastiest parts of human behavior. Not the nastiest. My patients have really dealt with the nastiest. So, why can I now, not deal with more normal things, right? And that's part of it. It's because the brain decided in moments of trauma, or the nervous system decided in moments of trauma, we're going to not think about what's actually going on, and we're going to stuff it and store it all in the peripheral nervous system. And that's why, in my particular unique situation, the emotional things can actually cause physical pain, which sucks, which in my opinion is stupid. I'm like, why are you doing that to me, body? That's dumb. That shouldn't be like that. But it's because literally the nervous system has figured out, kind of like a computer, hey, I can store this information elsewhere, and then the brain will still continue to function the way I want it to, and we can survive, right? And that's a problem, because that works only for so long, until then you become overwhelmed by pain stimulus. So it's how do you unfuck that? And that is the question of pain psychology and things like fibromyalgia. I had a combat vet patient, he'd been blown up before, and when he developed his fibromyalgia, he had bits of metal in his body and all stuff, and when he developed his fibromyalgia, he said it was the most debilitating pain of any of the pains he's ever had. not because it was like the most severe or most sharp, but because it just like was, everything was drained out of him and he couldn't do anything. And over 90% of men with fibromyalgia, which is the disorder basically where your nerves are telling you you're in pain all the time when they shouldn't, over 90% of men with fibromyalgia are combat vets, and the majority of females have a sexual assault history. So it's the body telling you, we're in danger, we're in danger, we're in danger, by telling it to you through pain. Because your mind can't handle it. So that information gets stored in a different library, basically. So it gets stored as pain instead of getting stored as, like, hey, I watched my buddies blow up, or hey, someone I trusted, put things in my body I didn't want, right? Like, that becomes too much for the brain to handle. So, pain. And there's other things. Not all of fibromyalgia is trauma. A significant portion of fibromyalgia may be post-viral, right? Like with chronic fatigue syndrome. So there are other factors, hormonal factors, chronic cortisol. So trauma, the reason I think this kind of stuff is so interesting is because how you can understand how to survive trauma, I think, connects well into helping ordinary people also survive big survival issues. So the kinds of things that have helped, or not helped, the kinds of things that have harmed soldiers, I think, give us a very good look at the brain and basically how it behaves under stress. So, and that's not to say that if you end up developing PTSD from a horrible experience that you survived, that you are weaker or your brain is less good or anything like that. I just say this was your situation, and these are some of the, everyone has factors and so forth. It's like if your leg gets chopped off, you're not more bad than the guy who went through the same situation. The IED exploded next to him, and he didn't get his leg blown off, right? It's just, everyone's dealt different cards. So that's important, because sometimes when we look at survival psychology, there's an element of blame on the people who, don't survive. But this humor thing is interesting, so I wanted to continue letting you know about it. Good to see you, Rafe. Every pursuit has its own subculture, from hang gliders and steep creek boaters to cavers and mountain bikers. I love their dark and private humor, those rituals of homage to the organism, which return us to that protective state of cool. It unequivocally separates the living from the dead. When I was fighting fires with the Chicago Fire Department, trying to learn something about how to be cool when going up in flames, I asked one of the men why he became a firefighter. I like to wreck things, he said. As we smashed windows after putting out a house fire, I believed him too. We had an old-timer at the firehouse I was working out. Bernie was his name, who wouldn't even put on his Kevlar turnout coat. He'd fall asleep on the truck on the way to a fire, and when one of us commented on it, Bernie said, I could sleep with my dick slammed in a door. Bernie wasn't the only one either. The guys called the big beer cooler in the kitchen the baby coffin. They had dozens of names for different kinds of corpses: crispy critters, stinkers, floaters, dunkers, and headless horsemen, just to name a few. Butch Farabee, National Emergency Services Coordinator for the National Park Service, told of taking his friend Walt Dabney on his first body recovery in Yosemite. There are a lot of them. They found the man they were looking for, Rick, after he'd been dead a week. It was just terrible, Farabee said. His body was quivering with maggots. He was stiff as a basted turkey, too. We had to break his arms to get him into the body bag. When we lowered the body bag over a cliff, we dropped him. Walt and I had to spend the night out there with the body. I started talking to it, saying, Hey, Rick, how's it going today? Sorry about dropping you. Walt thought I was either terribly disrespectful or out of my gourd. The fact is, you have to deal with things to the best of your ability. If you don't work with it, it'll get you. A dead body is not something you get used to. Some high-angle rescue workers call body bags long-term bivy sacks. It sounds cool, but survivors laugh and play, and even in the most horrible situations, perhaps especially in those situations, they continue to laugh and play. To deal with reality, you must first recognize it as such, and as Siebert and others have pointed out, play puts a person in touch with his environment, while laughter makes the feeling of being threatened manageable. The grotesque humor of the fighter pilots, then, that secret language, contains truths we don't even know we know. Moods are contagious, and the emotional states involved with smiling, humor, and laughter are among the most contagious of all. Laughter doesn't take conscious thought. It's automatic, and one person laughing or smiling induces the same reaction in others. Laughter stimulates the left prefrontal cortex, an area in the brain that helps us to feel good and to be motivated. There is evidence that laughter can send chemical signals. That's also the area that's triggered in transcranial magnetic stimulation. So when they put the big thing on your head, that's where the tappy taps go, that part of the brain. That stimulation alleviates anxiety and frustration. There's evidence that laughter can send chemical signals to actively inhibit the firing of nerves in the amygdala, thereby dampening fear. Laughter, then, can help to temper negative emotions. And while this might seem of purely academic interest, it could prove helpful when your partner breaks his leg at 19,000 feet in a blizzard on a Peruvian mountain. It is not a lack of fear that separates elite performers from the rest of us. So yeah, I think that's interesting, huh? So, interesting stuff. Speaking of both of those things, about survival, I said them at the wrong time. I should have said this earlier, but since I was talking about twisted signals in, when we're talking about signals getting messed up and trauma. So, it's why things that it can be really difficult after you've seen a certain amount of trauma, or after you've experienced a certain amount of trauma, or whatever. It can be frustrating because when those signals start getting swapped, the body is trying to do what worked in the past. But now it's like it's not working, and so it's really easy to develop a hate relationship with your body, which is my case. Like where it's just some of the nastiest, like most disgusting self-talk that you can start creating, where it's like how you would talk if you were a supervillain. Is some of my self-talk. It's just very bad, and it sucks because sometimes it's gone for years at a time and it's improved, and then something will happen and it's back to being like, why does because it's frustrating, like if you're trying to learn something and your brain is like, nope, we're gonna blur our eyes, make it not here, we're gonna get a headache, we're gonna make things real tired, we're gonna make the eyelids heavy, not out of tiredness, but out of like, nope, because we don't need that right now. That's too much. We need to just focus on this stuff and move forward, right? Like this ridiculous tunnel vision, like he's talking about there, where he's talking about like police officers who will focus on the wrong thing they'll see after they've been shot, like literal tunneling. That's what I'm talking about, where it's like you can't see. It's like why? I need my eyes to be able to see things. I need to be able to hear, and I'm not being shot right now. This is not an appropriate reaction to the stimulus that I'm receiving. It can be frustrating because it's like, once upon a time, I was definitely the best female combatant in my company. And now my body is like, oh no, a loud noise, let's die. And it's like, what, why? Why, stop it. It's very frustrating. And so you can imagine, I can only imagine not being I'm not a combat vet, right? So you can imagine for that soldier who has seen something blow the fuck up, and all of a sudden he's scared by, the silly Stardew Valley example is popcorn in the microwave, but he's scared by some other loud noise, and he's like, why am I like this? It's very frustrating, because like, I've dealt with bigger stuff, why am I now a baby? That can be incredibly frustrating. So, why are you saying no? That's weird. Stop that. Stop saying no. Yes, it's live. Go away. I'm cranky today because my journey with PTSD is not going well. And it had been going exceptionally well. And now my body has decided that we don't need to live a productive life. We need to hide in bed. And, like, that's frustrating. So it makes it that you end up needing things that are surprising. Like, so while the VA therapist is trying to talk to me today, right? She's trying to explain something to me, and my brain is, like, shutting out and, like, just not listening to her. And I even said to her, I'm like, I know cognitively what you're saying is true. I am incapable of believing it. I don't know why, and I'm having trouble looking at you, listening, all of this, it's like all shutting down. But then, when I have my birds over next to me, and I'm feeling their feathers next to my skin, and the one bird is trying to build a nest on my right breast, which is not where nests go, all of that, like, stimulus brings me back to the moment, and then I'm able to listen to her, right? It's amazing how dramatic the change is, where it's like, yeah, I literally can't see one moment because my eyes are blurring, and the next moment, the bird is over here, and it's like, okay, I can see, I can listen, because I have the little bird here, and I'm here in this moment. It's frustrating. It's an enormous amount of weakness, but it's a fact. That is how it is if you are that fucked up. And unfortunately, I am that fucked up. So I don't know if you've all seen my change.org petition, but basically, when airlines decided that they weren't going to respect emotional support animals anymore because of people completely abusing it by trying to bring peacocks and llamas and shit that are not going to fit onto a plane, which sucks because, like, hey, maybe, I don't know her situation, maybe she really did need her peacock, but a peacock is real big. That was never going to not disrupt other passengers, right? So, yeah, like, little things make a huge difference to people who are really sick, and so everyone else can make fun of it and be like, oh, the emotional support animals, what weak stuff. But some of us need this shit to survive without, like, literally going off, or without being in severe pain, in my case. So, please do sign the petition if you haven't already, and please do share it. And that is horrible, buddy. Yeah, it makes sense. Get Rafe, what you're saying. Just like seeing hot or fire, like, all of a sudden panic, even though that's not naturally in your nature. I'm very sorry about that. It sucks. It sucks a lot. And it sucks because it's easy to judge yourself because of it. And to be like, how dare I feel this way? It's stupid to feel this way. I've seen so much worse, so why am I weak now? Right? And there's things that, like, we don't talk about, right? Like, I'll casually say the phrase dead babies or rape victim, but I won't go into detail about, like, the things that are really bothering me. Like, I realized, like, telling somebody today, like, I can talk about this stuff when there's a camera, but I can't actually connect with another human being. There's, like, a plexiglass wall where I can be seen, but I'm not going to be touched. And I don't mean physically, I mean, like, emotionally. And that, it sucks. And it sucks because sometimes it takes a lot of effort to feel better. And it's a lot of work. And then even, like, little things, you know? Yeah. And sometimes it depends on how you heal. Time matters, and I definitely don't want to discourage you from providing encouragement, because that's a good thing. Time does make a difference. But when the brain has when the nervous system has decided to incorrectly process the information, sometimes the nervous system is just going to cement the incorrect processing, especially when it's decided to do something as stupid as store the information in your skin, right? Like store the information as pain instead of as thoughts and facts that happened, right? That's, because then how do you unfuck that? Because then you learn other problems on top of it, right? You start learning avoidance behaviors, right? You learn, I don't go outside because outside causes me physical pain. And then now you've learned another thing, another way to, like, cripple yourself, essentially. And I don't use that term lightly, right? And you got to have something that starts breaking you out of that. And that's tough. But the benefit of time is that with time, you can sometimes run into other people. You can sometimes run into other strategies, other events that can start to unteach you the bad lessons that you've learned. But time is very valuable in that way, in that it can introduce you to other options. It's hard. And it's frustrating. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this when you backtrack a whole bunch, right? I was literally a month ago incredibly optimistic, because after the TMS, after the ketamine treatment, even though ketamine treatment was making me miserable, and even though there were some really low dips, the beginning of the TMS treatment gave me maybe the most horrible panic attack I've ever had in my life, where I thought the trees were going to kill me, and trees generally don't do that. Not that they were going to kill me, I don't know how to express it. They were just terrifying. They were trees, and they were terrifying. Too many trees. Didn't like the trees. Didn't like that other humans existed. Didn't like anything. Didn't like anything living. Everything was scary. That was a pretty awful panic attack. I don't remember having anything like that since, like, almost childhood. So that happened at the beginning of the TMS. But things got better. With the ketamine, those horrible experiences, like I was like, felt like I was being erased. That was another scary thing. I felt like if you were, what I imagine it feels like to be a computer and have someone erasing your hard drive. It was scary. I was like, I have to, like, in my mind, it was like, I can only hold on to, like, God right now, because I might lose literally everything else. I felt like I was being erased. It was scary. It was not a fun, ketamine was not enjoyable for me. That was the first time. The second time was better. The third time was a little better. I'll talk about that in depth at some other time. But despite all the ups and downs with that and the pain psychology, you look at February 2023 compared to, March 2022, or, 2020, January of 2020, where there was a period of time, I'm talking a year and a half, 2 years, where I could not leave my house because I was sure if I left my house, someone was going to die. And I knew it was frustrating because I've always been a fairly logical person, and I knew logically that's not going to happen. So I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why do I believe this? I know it's not true, right? I know that, but it was like, I was just certain of it. It was like, I can't leave the house because if someone is going to die, I'm not going to be able to save them. I'm not going to be able to save them. People are just going to die. And not only am I not going to be able to save them, but somebody's going to get me. Somebody's going to be watching me, and somebody's going to stop me from saving somebody. Why? Because of the stuff that had happened in the military at the end in 2019, and babies that I had seen earlier that I had suddenly in my brain started to, like, mix all together, right? Just from too much trauma and exhaustion, right? So that was not a good place to be. And here, February 2023, I gave testimony in state senate. I was out I went shopping with my dad for the first time that I'd gone shopping in like a year and a half, right? I went out of the house, walked around with him. I had my bird with me. Pistachio was with me, my emotional support animal, but Brian wasn't, and that's like the first time something like that happened. Just, which even like in October when I went to Paraguay, I was so discouraged because I had a really bad panic attack during an important meeting I was supposed to have because it was way too crowded. And I was like, why on earth would my dad bring me to this place that's so crowded? Like, does he not understand in his fucking brain you can't bring someone with PTSD to this big crowded like mall place and it's noisy and everything is... My Spanish is usually great, but like not when it's like, what's going on? It was not good, but he didn't know, right? So like, but I still went to Paraguay in October, so that was like a huge step. So I'd been getting really encouraged over the last few months because it's like, okay, these things are really difficult, but we're doing them. We're succeeding. And it's embarrassing because these things shouldn't be difficult. Flying an airplane shouldn't be difficult, right? It feels like should. But what's the point of should? Who says should or shouldn't? Maybe it should be more difficult for all the normal people. Who knows? I mean, it shouldn't. We don't want that. So I was getting encouraged, and over the past couple of weeks, just things have really tanked. A big part of it, I think, was realizing the unlikelihood of being able to bring my husband and my birds to Paraguay with me this time, and the realization that like I don't really, every time I've been without him, especially for an extended period of time, something horrible has happened. Not directly correlated to him, but my deployment in Korea and then during residency, some of the stuff I saw, it was like when he's not there, the world explodes. So maybe that was a factor. A lot has happened in like a couple weeks. I spent my Purim trying to get my little sister, who has a genetic disorder, to poop. I was worried I was going to have to take her to the ER because her stomach was so stiff, and we had a little brother almost die and have to get major surgery because of this same genetic issue. And I was seeing some of these things, and I was like, oh my gosh. So that was Purim. At the same time, while I was trying to figure her situation out, my mom was actually in the ER, and there was drama, and 3 security guards followed her in the bathroom, and so there was stuff going on. And I got a letter from the U.S. Army Medical Command, who made some administrative... There were things that they were supposed to do a year and a half ago, that you should do when a doctor is ill to make sure that the patients are safe, that they didn't do, and so now they were doing them now when I was so much better. And so it's like, oh great, you didn't help me when I needed help, and now you're just gonna fuck me over. So, and just getting the letter with their name on it, like, brought back all these memories of the formal communications that had happened when I was trying to protect my patients, and there was a medic that refused to help them and then, like, lied about myself and a patient to try to, like, fuck over the patient. So there's, like, all these memories of, like, they don't have my back, and they're not going to let me help people, and people are going to get hurt because they don't fucking care. That, like, whole memory, remember that conflating all the deaths with also them screwing over my patients in ways in which the patients didn't die, but they were screwed over. All that, like, just seeing the envelope, right? So that all happened on Purim, on Tuesday. And it's like, oh no. And I'm saying this not to just talk about myself, although that is what I'm doing, but to say that, like, I don't know, if you have moments or months where you have, like, gone way backwards again, I feel you. Because it's discouraging. Because I had gotten so much better, I wasn't on my sleeping medication anymore. now I need it again. I had gotten so much better that there were no, like, mean, nasty head voices. Well, we got mean, nasty head voices again. You know, not like actual voices, but me. Because the amount of self-loathing is off the charts. And it was so much better. So it's been like, I don't know, a year and a half since my brain was like, fuck you, you whore, I hate you. Or like, you know, like, it's been a while since that's happened. And now, yay, we get to have that again. And that's not fun. It's not fun to have to listen to your brain hate you 24/7, you know? So, if you're there, I sympathize with you. And if you need help, and you feel that plexiglass wall, like I mentioned, and you feel like you can't get it, use a crisis line. Because the benefit of crisis lines is it's a professional, you don't know, you're not like a burden on them or anything like that. They don't know you. It doesn't matter if they know your business. You're not going to disappoint them. They expect you to come in being a screw-up anyway. Right? So, I have some crisis numbers and stuff in case anyone is listening to this. I always put them in the descriptions of my videos. But if anyone is listening to this and, like, they're in a crisis mode and need some help, but feel like they can't make themselves get it, you know, for whatever reason my stream elements isn't showing, because there should be a mental health trigger that just shows it, but that's okay. I'll copy and paste it instead so that you have it, because I want you to be okay, and I want you to know that sometimes it's okay to not be okay. Don't rest on your laurels. As in, don't sit down and give up and be like, yes, it's okay for me to be miserable. I'm going to continue to feel miserable and hide from my life out there. Don't do that. The world needs you. But it needs you in the best state you can be. So if you need help, you actually have a obligation to get it. Like you owe it to the rest of us to take care of yourself. Yeah, and vitamin D makes a big difference for a lot of people. There you go. That's therapist stuff, but if you can't afford online therapy, the phone number for the suicide helpline, crisis text line, all those kinds of things. So panic attacks, going to the shop like you're talking about, not being able to talk face to face, not eating. Yeah, you feel like you're doing so well, and now it's like, why go forward if I keep relapsing? Feels like an endless loop. But it is still worth it. And again, the reason it's still worth it is because as you're cycling, you never know if it's your down cycle or your up cycle that's going to help someone else. And sometimes you'll find, and this is a thing that I've found that is kind of unfair, but also kind of beautiful. Sometimes there will be those of us who seem like we're perpetually stuck, right? But if you can live out your stuckness and your suffering with nobility, and you can suffer with honor, sometimes you'll encounter somebody else who for the moment they're stuck, but the thing you're able to help them with makes them pretty permanently unstuck, right? Like you give them the thing that they needed, and they go out and they live their life, right? And their life is better. I've seen that. And sometimes I've had it where now that they're doing better than me, I can't talk to them anymore. Not because of them, but because of me. Because it's like, it's almost like a shame. It's almost like I don't know why I'm not better, but, or like, I don't really understand it. I don't know why. I'm thinking of one person in particular who when I was hospitalized in 2018, this person reminded me of my brother, and I kind of adopted him, and we became very close. And his life has gone real well since then, and he reported being significantly helped by me, and he significantly helped me when I was in Korea. But now, where his life seems so much better than mine, functionally, I find it very difficult to be honest with him. I find it very difficult to be like, yeah, buddy, like, we should hang out, but my shit sucks, because I don't know why. So, that's why it's helpful to have make sure you're connected with professionals. I don't know what kind of professionals you're connected with, Rafe, but, sometimes where it's like, you can't get through the plexiglass wall, and it's like, I know that this is my friend who would like to help me if he could, but it's like, I refuse, and I don't know why I refuse, because I don't even know what to say. I don't even know how to approach help or what they can do. Or like my best friend this week was really sweet and tried to reach out, and I told her, like, I don't know why, but I can't, and I don't know why I can't, but don't be that. Don't be like me. Don't be to where you can only be human when there's not a human there. So I don't have all the answers, but you are not alone, at the very least. I can say that. So, and at least, even if you don't have all the answers for something, or you don't know how to get out of your cycle, give yourself a fighting chance, right? Exercise. I lost 20 pounds this year, yay! Because I started to try to give myself a fighting chance by eating breakfast and exercising at least a little bit. Almost 20 pounds, yeah. So, like, give yourself a fighting chance, because biological factors affect your brain. So, make sure you have a therapist on board if you need one, right? If, a trauma therapist who's doing CPT or WET, or if you have behavioral struggles or depression, CBT. If you have a personality disorder, DBT, or even without a personality disorder, DBT is super helpful in reducing self-harm and suicide attempts. So, something that's evidence-based, right? Get something evidence-based. What I am finding particularly, and we'll see how it turns out, but it was particularly helpful and interesting, this EAET that I've been put through for the pain psychology, which the manual has some outdated, unscientific principles in it, but the actual technique as applied by my pain psychologist is quite effective. So, right, give yourself a fighting chance, and then when you find something works for you, share it with someone else, encourage someone else, because sometimes it is your suffering that creates the story, right? This could be your origin story. I don't know how old you are, Rafe. I don't know how long you've been dealing with the other factors, the physical factors. I know you said 8 years since your, horrible event happened with your friend. However long it's been, this can still be your origin story, right? Even if you've been in the same cycle of up and down yesterday, you don't know what tomorrow is going to be like, right? Even if we're here for the next 20 years, we don't know what happens at 20 years in one day. So that's why suicide is such a bad idea, because, as if people say it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, right? It's permanent, and you miss the possibility of what could have happened, right? What could happen tomorrow? I don't know. This was the question when I was really panicked about testifying for this state senate thing. I had this fear, just like, what if this goes wrong? What if this bad thing happens? This bad thing. I mean, I was imagining like shooters coming in. Like, it was getting dramatic. Or what if a bunch of people smear the things I'm saying and it ends up hurting more people than it helps? Like, what if I'm wrong and I end up fucking things up, right? And I'm swearing a lot today. I know it's not very relaxing, but this is the truth of where we are. And I was like, what if all these terrible things happen, right? But then I asked myself, but what if something good happens? What if I'm able to say something that changes something? What if somebody's mind has changed? What if I don't go, nothing changes? But if I go, what if I say the thing, And people who heard me testify had things to say about, it was a different testimony than what anyone else was giving. And I don't know that it'll make a legislative difference, but I know it made a difference in the room. So the what if was true, and I don't know the what if still. I don't know what if somebody is in the room that then there is a legislative difference. I just know that I needed to be there because I had information based on the things I've seen that nobody else had. I was the only physician, and it was a women's health bill, and I was the only physician testifying. So, I mean, that's a no-brainer for, like, you should be there. But, what if something good happens? So what if you stay alive, and what if you do get out of your rut? What if your rut gets better?